Last week learned about King Nebuchadnezzar. I'm gonna say King Nebuchadnezzar. So like I'm gonna mess it up so many times. So I'm gonna say King Neb. All right, is that cool with everybody? King Neb. All right, so I'm gonna say King Neb. So and even in my notes it says King Neb. So King Neb, all right, he was very greedy and he had a desire to make his kingdom everlasting. And then we kind of learned the limitations he had as a king, and then we have limitations as well. So that was last week's message. And today we're going to be learning something completely new and different. If you're online, and I'm super happy that you're able to be with us, I wish I could take off my mask so I can speak more clearly. So if you can't hear me as well, I'm super, super sorry. But I want to share something real quick and personal. During the pandemic, I want to ask you guys, did you guys all struggle with your relationship with Christ? I know I did. For a couple of months, I really lost myself in who I was in Christ. It was pretty bad. Like, God seemed so irrelevant for a couple of months. The pandemic became the most important thing. My own family and my own family's health and safety became a priority, making sure that our youth students, that our ministry was going well, and that all of you were being served as much as possible became a priority. Work and school became a priority as it was changing constantly. Then toilet paper went missing all of a sudden. And on top of that, coughing, if you coughed, it meant like you were holding a gun or something like that, and everybody would look at you all weird. Then what happened politically became huge. And then Black Panther died, Wakanda forever. And the addiction to Netflix, games, and music and food just like spiked up like crazy, right? And there was this immense pressure that was weighing down from the whole world. And God didn't seem to be the answer to our problems. So what happened was my relationship with him ultimately took a hit. I then became afraid and kind of ashamed of where I was with God. The priority of what the world was telling me to do, the priority of what the world was challenging me to do, pressuring me to do, became more of a priority than enjoying my relationship with God. This story that we're about to read, Nebuchadnezzar, King Neb, basically builds a statue, and he plays this music, and he says, like, when you hear this music, you need to bow down. All right, so kind of imagine like the national anthem, right, or the Pledge of Allegiance. To this day, you don't know why you stand up, right? We're just told as kids stand up, okay, I just stand up, and you just do it. So kind of like in the national anthem, the Pledge of Allegiance, when you hear this music, you have to automatically bow down and worship it. So then a law is made, all right? When you hear the music, you must fall down and worship the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace. Immediately thrown into a blazing furnace. So that's the law that's set. So what happens is some people notice that they're Jews who are not bowing down, so they decide to snitch on them. He told King Neb, but there are some Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province. So the affairs meaning like the structure and like the works and the laws, the affairs of the province or region of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, to pay no attention to you, your majesty. They neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold you have set up. So what happens is King Neb goes to investigate and finds Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and tells them, you're not bowing down to my statue? Are you not bowing down? He responds and lets them know, if you do not worship it, you'll be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. So he's keeping up with what he said, the law that he made up. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand? King Neb has become so confident in himself, he thinks that there is nothing in this world that can stop his will. So there is this pressure for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to obey and listen to King Neb. And that can speak to us today. That can speak to us today. So what I think, when I come to the story and I think about what's happening is King Nebuchadnezzar, King Neb, he represents the people of this world and the pressure of this world, and the pressure people of this world put upon us. And then the furnace, all right, the furnace, that fire represents The punishment of when you don't follow the pressure or when you don't follow the world. So King Nebuchadnezzar represents the people of this world and the pressure of this world, and the furnace represents the punishment. Does that kind of make sense to you guys? If not, I'm super sorry. So I'll kind of explain this. So this people of this world will pressure you and say God doesn't exist, right? That's more of a common thing, right? That God does, that's the pressure of this world right now, is that God doesn't exist. And the punishment, if you believe that God does exist, the punishment is that you are crazy and you're lost. That's the punishment. The people of this world will pressure you and say, enjoy the drunkenness of the material world and addiction, money, success, and lust. The punishment if you don't enjoy the world is that you are trapped. You are following a bunch of rules. The people of this world will pressure you and say there is no point in seeking God's love, and there is no point in going to church. That's the pressure of this world. And the punishment if you do try to seek God, and you try to go to church and enjoy church, the punishment if you do those things is that you will find nothing. You guys see where I'm going with this? So that's what King Nebuchadnezzar is kind of doing with Shadrach, Meshach. He's pressuring them to bow down to his statue, his idea of what the world is supposed to look like. And the furnace represents the punishment of when they don't bow down to the statue. But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they respond with such strong and beautiful words of encouragement. Okay, verse 16, King Nebuchadnezzar, you see why he didn't see King, look how complicated that word is. It's super long, right? Super funny because in Daniel 5, there's another confusing name. It's like King like a Belshazzar or something like that. And then at the very end, Daniel 6, the king's name is King Darius. I was like, what the heck? It's so much easier. But anyway, King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. Right? They don't need to defend themselves in this matter, right? If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they've made a statement and said, no matter what, we are not going to bow down to your statue, King Neb. So King Nebuchadnezzar, he does not believe in God's power. He's offended and is angry and orders his soldiers to throw Shadrach, and Meshach, and Abednego into the fire. And the verse is that he says that he threw them into the fire. And the reason why this is important is because they didn't get pushed, they got thrown in. Means that they were at one point on a ledge and they were thrown into it. They fell into the fire. So imagine going through that. They were tossed from above, firmly tied. The King Nebuchadnezzar, he's at the furnace in the bottom. He looks and sees the men in the fire. And instead of seeing 3, he sees 4 people in the furnace of the fire, right? He's confused and asks, wasn't there only 3? His advisors are like, yeah, there was only 3. I'm pretty sure there was 3 people. We saw 3 people fall into the fire. There's 3. Verse 25, he says, look, I see 4 men walking around the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like the sons of God. So when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are in the fire, King Nebuchadnezzar sees another in the fire. The man is believed to be Jesus before he comes out as Jesus. Then King Nebuchadnezzar says, verse 28, praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted in him and followed the king's command, and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own. That's the whole entire story of Daniel 3. I just did the whole entire chapter for you guys. So if anyone asks you ever read Daniel 3, you can say, yes, I have. See, we have a powerful God. That is very, very clear. We have a very powerful God. The power to create man from the soil that sets on the ground. The power to split the Red Sea 2 places, in 2 ways, and that his people can walk right through it. But more so, the true power of God is not only in miracles, but this is immense desire, or very strong desire to let us know that he loves you. And this power is revealed when he defeats sin to the death of his one and only begotten Son. So now I kind of sped through a lot of the chapters, so I just want to focus on one verse during this whole entire story. Verse 17, if we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it. He will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, but even if he does not, I'll say that one more time, but even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. I'm pretty sure Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego wanted God to save them and didn't want to get burned. Just out of their own desire. I'm pretty sure that's what they wanted. But they knew God and they trusted God. Not so much in the sense that they were going to be saved, because then it would have ended with, God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. And that's it. And it goes, majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. But they go even further and say, but even if he does not save us, even if he does not. See, what they were doing was that they were in peace. They were in peace as where they were with God. Because they knew that the furnace was not ultimately the end. And they knew that their relationship with God was more important than anything they had. See, there are moments where God will not do what we want him to do. When the world pressures us to do or act a certain way, we think if God just took that away, it'd be so much easier. He is more incapable and able to do so. He can. But the pressures of this world, to be honest, make our lives a little harder to believe in God. The world pressures us in such a unique way where God doesn't seem as cool or approachable or fun. Imagine if we lived in a world where there was no idols. Of course that doesn't exist, right? But his will isn't to ever make your life easier. His will is to let you know that he loves you, and no matter what, he will be with you. That is God's will. That he loves you, and no matter what, he will be with you. He'd be summed up perfectly by Apostle Paul. Apostle Paul being the man who died for Christ in Romans chapter 5, where he says, not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance produces character, hope. Hope does not put us to shame because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. See, God at times wants us to know how much he loves us, that he will allow us to be challenged to face the punishment of this world so that we can truly and only understand that God is always with us. God will let us go through the pressures of this world, and he will let us face the punishment of this world, which is what we see with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You see, God was not with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego because they went into the fire. Right? God's like, I'm not going to be Superman. I'm not going to show up just because they're in the fire. No, God was always with them, even before they were in the fire. It reveals an answer to a struggle many of us face. In the midst of pressures from the world, in the midst of being punished for not following the world, our relationship with God is more important than anything. This is one of the coolest parts. When you're facing the hardship of life, when you're pressured to follow the world and not God, you have a choice to pray and worship God. Instead of choosing a life of addiction, a life of hypocrisy, a life of shame. Notice what criticizes us. People will say, those Christians are pretty weird and pretty crazy. It is in that fire, it is in that punishment Christ will reassure us he is with us and is never left. We have to believe God is near more than we ask God to make our lives easier. And I really want to stand here before you and tell you, like, if you follow God and everything will be perfect and easy. I really want to be able to say that, but I can't. And if you follow God, not all of you will make a lot of money. Not all of you will be popular. Not all of you will have the perfect boyfriend or girlfriend. It's not like that. I can't say that. But what I can say is that there is something more precious in this world than the pure, free love of Jesus Christ and that relationship that we have with Him. So that's why when the people of this world pressure you and say God doesn't exist, when the people of this world pressure you and say God doesn't exist, instead of doubting and feeling lost, know that Christ is near and that you are found. When the people of this world pressure you and say, enjoy the drunkenness of the material world, addiction, money, success, and lust, instead of feeling trapped, know that Christ is near and you are free. When the people of this world pressure you and say, there is no point in seeking God's love, no point in church, instead of feeling there is no hope and there is nothing, trust that Christ is near, know that He is near, and that He is everything. During the pandemic, God did not seem to be near many times. And the pressure of the pandemic seemed to be more important. The pressure of politics, the pressure of just everything that was not God seemed to be so important. And I hope through this story, through this message, through this learning and teaching, we can say confidently that God is always near. And as much as the world is trying to challenge me, to change me and pressure me, I can truly say I enjoy my relationship with God that is everlasting. God's will is to always let you know Christ is near. That is His will. He wants us to know that He is always near. When the world pressures you to accept the world and reject God, remember God's will. Let's say that one more time. God's will is to let you know Christ is always with you. He's always near. When the world pressures you to accept the world and reject God, remember God's will. Let me pray for us.